I know many of you students have her as your instructor, but she is a legend in many forms. No, you created your own legend as well. Come on. No, you're a pretty spectacular human, and it is really an honor to be around you. And you have not changed since, I swear, since I met you. And exactly what Wayne said, you look amazing as always. So to start, I mean, I know some of you have done research and have seen some of the work from Spider Women. But I'm going to give like a brief sort of bullet points, highlights of Muriel. So you're Kuna and Rapahona, is that how you say it? Rapahana? Which is in which areas?
Kunas are off the coast of Panama. They're a sovereign nation. It's called Kunayala. Mm-hmm. And my mother is from Rappahannock, and that is Pocahontas. Oh. And Disney made all that stuff happen. Yeah. And that's the Rappahannock River and the Rappahannock Valley. And that's where my grandmother came from, and then grandfather.
And where is that in the United States? Like what area?
Virginia.
Virginia, okay. Cool. Because I don't know the nations over there. I don't know how many people here do, but
no.
There's some really obscure names, like there are in the west of Canada.
Well, I come to Canada, I remember, as some man asked me on the street, like, well, where are you from? And I said, New York State. And he said, oh, there's still Indians there.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. Welcome to Canada. So you grew up performing in, you grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and you presently live in the same house you grew up in, which I think is really freaking cool. You grew up performing in medicine shows with your family as a teenager. And you were the co-founder of a group called Little Eagles, which is an active group still in New York and is now called the Thunderbird American Indian Dancers. Is that correct? Yeah? So
That's
awesome.
Correct.
You studied modern dance with the respected Alwyn Nicolai, Eric Hawkins, and Jean Erdman. You also were an original member of the very innovative and prestigious Joseph Chaikin Open Theater Company, where you performed in many groundbreaking productions. You are, of course, a founding member and artistic director of Spider Woman Theater, the longest-running Native American woman's theater company and probably the longest-running woman's theater company still in existence, I would imagine, too. That is pretty incredible. And you're still working with your sisters.
And we're still living.
And you're still living. And you haven't killed each other. And there were moments, right? You are a choreographer, a director, an actor, an educator, a mentor, a respected influencer. Like, who needs TikTok? You need to talk to this lady about influencing. And an incredible matriarch in Indigenous theater. You choreograph Throwaway Kids, And she knew she was she for the Aboriginal dance program at the Banff Centre for the Arts. You directed the Scrubbing Project with the Turtle Gals, performance ensemble, and Evening in Paris with Raven Spirit Dance Company. You were a dramaturg with Native Earth Performing Arts. And as an actor, you were Mary Deity in the off-Broadway hit Taylor Mack's Lily's Revenge.
God, I forgot about that.
You created the role
That's
of
right.
Philomena Moosetail in the famous The Raz Sisters by Thompson Highway, a seminal work in the development of First Nations theatre and plays in Canada, or on this side of the border. You performed Aunt Sadie in The Unnatural and Accidental Being? Isn't it Being? I have woman here.
It is woman.
Is it woman? I always thought it was Being. By the beautiful Marie Clements. And Spirit Woman in Bones, an Aboriginal dance at opera at the Banff Centre. You created many one-woman shows, Hats in Soft, Trail of the Otter, and most recently Red Mother. And your latest project is Material Witness, right? Which explores violence and healing in the lives of Indigenous women in rural and urban communities across Turtle Island. So
We have a new one.
And you have a new one.
Yeah.
What's your new one?
Misdemeanor Dream.
Oh, that's right. And that's what you were in, and you were just
That's right.
speaking about a
Right.
few moments ago, just before COVID hit. You were performing that in New York.
In New York.
So I'm going to stop there and move into asking some questions. And I understand Deb has some images that we might share as well.
Yeah.
And you're very familiar with
Yeah.
these. So, you know, if you
We
ever...
should look at this a minute.
Sure.
This is Misdemeanor Dream.
Yeah, sure. Wow.
And
Beautiful.
half of the cast is from Canada and the other half is from the States. So that's Sid Bob, Marjolaine McKenzie. I can't see. I can't see them. Okay. And Imelda. Lisa.
Oh, with the white
Yeah,
shirt.
yeah.
And then Gloria. And
Yeah.
Sunny
Yeah,
from Eulalie.
yeah.
You remember them, Dia? Okay. Okay. Up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's the water walk person who does the water walks all over Minnesota.
Right. Around Superior?
Yeah.
Is? Yeah.
Many places.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Right after we closed.
Wow, really?
Yep.
Oh, that's awful.
So, but it's dwindling now because people can't come in, from Canada. So we're trying to figure out how to work with videos and film and use that. And some people are sick now, even.
In New York or
In
here?
New York.
In New York.
In New York.
Right.
So, but I think it will happen. I really do. I think it will happen because we've been working 5 years on this piece.
Wow. Wow. So maybe give us a little bit of a synopsis.
Yeah, well,
It's okay. Oh. Oh.
what was I? What was?
You were talking about the cast and how people are sick on the show.
Yeah. Well, Misdemeanor Dream.
The synopsis.
You're right. It started out. It started here, in Canada at Stratford. They asked me because I was interested in doing Midsummer's Night Dream, and I was interested in doing it with different languages, native languages, and so I asked mostly people I worked with or students of mine to come together and work together. It isn't exactly what Shakespeare Festival thought would happen. And, I had people who said things like, I didn't know what I was looking at. So I went back and they called me, but they wanted, yes, I should, work with language. They was surprised at the way I work. And
What do you mean by that? Like the way?
well, I came in on it was the Midsummer's Night's Dream, and I was thinking of things like fairies and brownies and little people and all the things that we talk about, that Native people talk about to each other. And we brought up a lot of stories about little people and brownies and all of that. And that's where we went. And they thought there would be at least a sentence from Shakespeare. And I really wasn't interested. I was interested in the idea. And I was interested in the magic that we think of, the spirits that we think of. That's what I was interested in. And what was it? Their logic? No, our magic is their logic. That's what we came up. So,
That's beautiful.
yeah. What did I say? Our logic is their magic.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it sounds nicer with
Yeah.
our magic is their logic.
Well,
because
I
they
think it's our
from-
magic is their logic.
Because they think
Yeah.
from here and the magic
Yeah,
is from
yeah.
here, right?
Yeah, and that was the problem of, I realized that if I went into that institution, and everyone wants to be there, that I would lose a lot of what I wanted to do. So, they called me up and they wanted me to do it in different languages and talk about the languages. But I really wasn't interested in that. I was interested in the fairies and the brownies and all of that. So I asked a group of people to come together in New York, and that's how we started to work. Then the pandemic hit us. And with that, I decided that I really wanted to do a Zoom workshop for, I don't know how many, it was a week? Yeah, oh God, I think of it now, from 10 o'clock to 5. Was that?
Oh my gosh.
And one of the things, I'm naive, and maybe that's lands me in different places, but I really thought, let's explore really language, because I wanted to put language into the piece that we were doing. And people came in and they brought different bits of language. Then we started to talk about language. And you don't realize until you're really talking face to face how hurt we are. I mean, really, how hurt, how damaged. You know, residential schools, I didn't realize until last year that my father was in a residential school, and it was part of the school.
Wow, really?
Off the coast of Panama.
Of course.
Missionaries came in there, took him away, cut his hair, changed his name.
Wow. And
And
you only learned of that?
I only learned, they never talked about it.
Oh, wow.
So that's that's what I wanted to do. And it erupted on Zoom. And having Zoom erupt is kind of scary. And, you know, people were crying, people were yelling, and they were really angry. We had to stop and you know, get ourselves together again.
And this is this group?
And this is this piece.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah.
And it's about little people and language and fairies and all of that.
Cool. Wow.
And
So-
we're going to do it.
And you're going to keep moving forward
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
And have you met on Zoom again since?
We're opening in.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah. We're really doing it. We're really doing it.
Fantastic.
Yes.
And do you want to explain what La Mama is to the students, please?
In New York City, especially downtown Manhattan, there's a very wide theater space, different theaters that have popped up. It was cheap there, and people were able to rent storefronts and have theaters there. Well, there was a woman named Ellen Stewart who decided that she was going to take over a basement and serve drinks and have theater there. And she was really interested in the playwrights. And that's what she did. She went to jail a couple of times. The place was raided. And little by little, she moved to different venues until I think she got a Ford Foundation, and they discovered her. And they gave her money. And then she was able to buy this one piece of property for $2 because, you know, it was no longer any good. They'll give it to the theaters. And she was there for years and years and years and years. I grew up there. You know, she would make me do things. She was a wonderful mentor. All kinds of fantastic theater pieces came out of La Mama. And she fought racism. I was in open theater, and it's a very avant-garde, you know, group to be in. And no one talks about racism. And there were only 2 dark spots in this group. And one woman was African American, and there was me. And I remember there was an audition, and I came to work. Open theater was there, and came to work. And I asked Ellen, like, where's everybody? She says, don't you know about the audition? So what audition? And she says, wait here. I'll be back. That's what she said to me. And she called up the agent and said, how come you haven't asked her? Well, everyone else went. And she sent me out. She sent me out for the audition, whether I wanted it or not. She sent me out to the audition. So in many ways, you know, I really appreciate. She used to babysit for me and stuff like that. I had babies, and when I
So
came
she
out, she
started
was
this
upset.
whole-
What?
She started this whole scene,
Of
La Mama,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the kind of underground theater scene.
Yeah, it
Wow.
was. Now she has a bigger place that she bought for, and she had one of the first native theaters groups with the Niiganigaabwe was the director, and she got us all together. And when I think about that, I think what happened with it was called Native American Theater Ensemble, was everyone came from all over the states, from different reserves and different schools. And it was the first time a lot of these people had ever been in New York City, and they went bananas. I mean, it was like, oh my God, trying to find people to get to the 10 o'clock class was hard.
Yeah, you think Toronto's crazy? New York is like 4 times
Yeah.
crazier than Toronto on steroids. Like, it's crazy. 24/7. Non-stop. And yeah, this was the 70s, and
Yeah.
it was
It was the 70s.
an interesting
Yeah.
time.
It made me think, when people started to talk about CIT, that I knew, I'm a city Indian. I understood a lot of things that these guys were going bananas about. You can drink all you want, and it stays open till 3 o'clock in the morning. There's drugs on the corner. There's drugs. I mean, it was quite something. And Ellen Stewart gave everyone that came in free apartments. She bought a whole building for like $13 or something. And everyone was in there, and the place was wild. It was really wild.
Oh my God, that must be so cool. There should be a documentary on that.
I'm sure that'll be coming out soon. But it was quite, So when I realized, and all these famous actors and directors came to teach the dear little natives. And I was like pissed off. No one was asking me. But all the famous natives directors were there. But what they did, they would ask you questions, not like you do. They would ask you questions, really, kind of spread your body and your entrails out on the floor and look at it. But they never put you back together again. And so you ended up, I know what was happening, that it ended up crawling out of a studio. And I really, really resented that. But nobody was paying attention to me. And then they couldn't figure out why did anyone show up the next day? Or they went on a toot. What do you mean they went on a toot? We were having such a good time. And didn't make any of those connections of how you teach people that are really different from you. So, when CIT happened, I really wanted to be in on that, because the connections, which I talk about all the time, the connections and how to approach Native students, which is what they should have been doing at that time. Yeah.
Well, that was such a time ago, and in some ways they were ahead but behind in their approach, I guess,
Yeah.
too, right?
Well, you think they wouldn't, because it's
New York.
New York, and a lot of the exercises I teach here
Wow.
come from
Yeah.
the beginning of that.
Wow.
But there was no consideration of who we were.
Right. Right. Interesting. And so, how many? You said when you first went, you were one Indigenous person with a black person, and then another group formed when people started coming to New York from.
Yeah, that was the one that at Ellen's, at La Mama. That was the Native
Right.
American Theater Ensemble.
Wow. So that was in the 70s. And
Yeah.
so have many of those artists who did come, did they end up continuing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them. Niiganigaabwe is the president, is the director of theater, native theater studies, or native theater, studies in UCLA.
Wow. Cool.
you know.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, and that's probably a big shift, too, that they have that program at UCLA.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's been years for something like that to develop as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it would be like U of T or something here, equivalent, maybe.
Oh, yeah. It's in
Maybe.
California. It's the university there.
So, Brooklyn, I've always loved your accent.
I have an accent.
A very thick Brooklyn, New York accent.
I don't believe that.
And an incredible sense of style. You've always been such a stylish person, fashionista. And you always wear different colors. Like, today you're in dark colors, but you have like your blue mask.
Yeah.
But you often have other colors, like that beautiful coat, right?
Yeah.
And I always think about you and all of your colors, and that represents you and your family and your world. Almost like the mocha tattoos. It's like you and your colors. It's like you and your family and that history. Like, I feel like when I'm around you, there is that part of some sort of connection there. And then I think about you living in New York as a little child. Like, that must have been crazy. You and your sisters, like, how magical. Like, New York to me, I come from Northern Ontario, and how we were talking about New York is just, wow, it's incredible. It is a performing arts world. The whole theater scene is incredible there. Food and the energy. And like, I think about you there and growing up, and do you have like memories of, it's an Italian neighborhood you grew up in? How the heck did your family end up there in Brooklyn? And, I think I read somewhere that you referenced it as like, that urban Indian area too, as well.
Oh, yeah.
And with the Italians, like Sault Ste. Marie has a huge Italian population as well, right? So I find it kind of fun.
We grew up native in an Italian immigrant neighborhood in Brooklyn. So my father was called Chief, he was called Tanto, and all those things.
Yeah.
And my father went along with it because the Italians liked them, and if he didn't say anything, he got better jobs. He was a longshoreman, and it was all mafia. You know mafia, right? The Godfather type of life in Brooklyn, and I lived really in the midst of that.
Wow. Wow. Do you have any specific memory that comes to mind that kind of was a milestone or connects to who you are now?
Well, there were a lot of us. There was mostly Iroquois coming down from Canada, and they were all, working on,
The buildings.
The buildings.
Yeah.
They were working on so there were a lot of iron workers, and they lived maybe 7 blocks from where we lived.
Right.
And they really started to really come in, bringing their families in and so forth. But the families I knew came up with my father. He and them, a lot of them traded songs. That was one thing that they did. In the neighborhood I lived in, the next door was a Native family. Next door to us was another Native family. So,
Cool.
so,
Wow.
so there were a lot of, and when I was growing up, when I was growing up, this was the time when ceremony was punished.
Yeah.
And a lot of older people from medicine people came across the States, and they were worried about what they were going to leave, and or it'll disappear.
Yeah.
So they came to New York City, and they came to Brooklyn, and they found all these kids that were like sponges.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot of songs, and I'm sure I was taught songs that I should not have known,
Right.
and I was
Wow.
taught to dance. I show dance. I used to show dance. Southern and northern. And when we, well, this is a story. We really wanted to start a group, and we were like 9, 10, and 11, and we discovered that in Brooklyn on State Street there was a church, Kyla Church, and Kyla Church had a minister there that spoke Mohawk and gave his sermons in Mohawk. So we went to him and said, we would like to use your basement to just rehearse and talk. And all the Mohawk families were really excited. And they were, sent the kids off with us, and we went and we taught everything we knew. They taught everything they knew. And we started a group, and that was the Little Eagles.
Right.
And we
okay.
were like, the oldest was maybe 13 or 14.
Wow, that's so cool. That's great.
But what happened was that we had a huge sense of who we were.
Mhm.
Even though we were in an Italian, we had a sense,
Italian neighborhood,
yeah.
urban
Oh,
Indians.
I fought. I was,
Yeah.
I was tough. Was a tough little girl. And,
Oh,
you know.
really? That's hard to believe.
And so, I was. So there, we were in elementary school, and the teachers started to. The teacher that I had started to talk about the natives are dead, American Indians are dead, and our culture is dead. And I got up and said, that's not true. I'm living and I have a family, and I don't know what I said to this man. And I got into big trouble, sent to the principal, and big trouble. But then talking amongst my friends, I found out they did the same thing, and they were in trouble too. They got in trouble where they were in elementary school. And with that, we pushed to get assembly to show us. And we came in and we talked about who we were, and showed them some of our dances, showed them some of the songs. And we went from, grammar school to grammar school doing that. And we called ourselves the Little Eagles.
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah, it was. We didn't even think about being scared or anything. We just opened our mouths and talked.
Wow. And so did some of those young artists that, really, they were young artists. You were all young creators with a political sort of foundation that motivated you in some ways. Did they move forward with you at all?
Some did.
Some did, yeah.
Louis Mofsey, who's Hopi, Ho-Chunk, and myself, we started the Little Eagles. We also started Thunderbird American Indian Dancers.
Oh, cool.
So the Little Eagles grew up. We were all sent away to schools, and so I remember when we thought our first powwow, and it was big time for us. And I didn't know if I was going to do it because I was in dance school. And so it was a lot of money to put it together. Mm-hmm. You know how much money?
How much?
$20 each.
Woo!
$20 each to start a powwow. Wow. That's amazing.
Wow.
So we had, it was the McBurney YMCA, and that was in Manhattan, and they let us every month, once a month, we had a powwow there. Wow. People come from all over. And then we started to have outdoor powwows. Mm-hmm. But it started with, I don't know, maybe 10 of us. Right. With $20 each.
Wow. Amazing. And is that how you started doing the medicine shows? And
Oh, no.
No?
Medicine shows.
Rodeos.
My father. Oh, God.
Matt, do you guys know about the traveling medicine shows?
No.
Maybe, you might want to give them a little primer
well,
on that.
There were these, I'm trying to remember the names. They were, what are they called? They're these rodeo shows, but they're not really rodeo shows. These are people that I can't think of the name of who's the wild no, it was the Wild West shows. That's what they were called.
West,
Wild West shows.
Yeah.
And these were native people from all over the country and into Mexico and into Canada.
With white people.
Hmm?
With white people, though, were in these shows, too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We had cowboys.
Yeah.
And the cowboys. And they had in Brooklyn this club called the Cowboy and Indian Club. And the Cowboy and Indian Club had all these different people. Like the cowboys, they had their own horses. They could do whip, what do you call it? Whipping and lassoing. And they did all of that stuff. And they taught it to native people. I was taught how to use a whip. And and I could do all those cheesy looking things. And now, the princess will put her cigarette in her mouth, and I'd put my in her mouth, go like this, and he would whip the that's right. And the same way, and to her back, around her fanny. It was, a remarkable. I mean, when you think of it now, that these Wild West, but all of these Wild West shows came out of all these different shows that were traveling the country. And so they started to come to New York City. But that's where the Grand Entry started with Wild West shows.
Wow, yeah.
And I remember when we had our first powwow when I was a baby, and I must have been 9 or 10. And it was amazing. What? Oh, yeah, let's show the picture.
Cool. Thanks, Rose.
Can't find him. Yeah, there it is. There it is. This was the first powwow on the East Coast.
So where are you?
I am a little girl in a white leather outfit in the middle on the ground. All the kids are on the ground there with the braids.
Oh, look how cute.
And my father is there, and my mother, and my aunt, and up there someplace is my sister. Yeah, Gloria is there someplace. And the thing is sometimes I put this up when I'm talking, and people will come up and look at that, and they'll say things like, "Hey, that's my grandmother," you know, and that's what I love about this picture, you know. And all these people come from all over the States and Canada and Mexico. And it was the wonderful story about this is that this was a big arena, and I don't know where they got the money they had. They really had horses. But the thing was, all these people that came from Wild West shows, you have to have a grand entry. And so with the grand entry, you have to have the Star-Spangled Banner. So they were running around, and they got my sister Gloria, who has a great voice, and she was running around writing down the Star-Spangled Banner. And she sang the Star-Spangled Banner at the same time. This guy that was, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. He was one of the big guys from the Wild West shows. His name was Earl Two Bear. And he was on a white horse with a red satin, I'll always remember this, I was 9, a red satin flowing, you know, dance outfit with a big headdress. And when she started to sing the Star-Spangled Banner, the doors opened, and he was on his white horse in his glory with his American flag in his hand.
Wow.
And he rode all around the arena. And I'll always remember it. Always remember it. It was like, boy, I'm really Indian. That's what went through my head. You know, like, wow.
Wow, that's crazy. I can almost see this person. But you know, I think about when I went to the museum opening in Washington, and I remember seeing so many Native people with like patriotic T-shirts of like, you know, an image of a Native person with their headdress or whatever, and then the American flag and like sweatshirts and T-shirts. Yeah. And it was really bizarre for me to see that, because I don't really think we think that on this side of the border. So
it's hard for me to get a passport and go to Europe, because then they look at it and they don't think anything, you know, you're an American.
Right. Yeah.
And that really used to really get me. You know, like,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So here's a weird question about Brooklyn and all these Indigenous and Italians. So were there a lot of intermarriage and
oh, yes,
procreation?
There's a lot of Mohawks I know that are half Italian.
That's awesome. There must be some
yeah,
beautiful skin with curly-haired Indians.
Great last names.
Yeah.
I remember one guy that was, at the takeover when that happened with the golf course. Yeah, Oka. His name was Lasagna.
Oh, right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And he came from, from our area.
There you go. Yeah.
And his,
Interesting.
his aunt or something. Yeah. Yeah.
The famous lasagna.
Yeah.
So you went from being an attraction to moving into avant-garde theater in New York City, which is pretty incredible.
I think with me it was more curiosity than anything else.
Yeah.
I was powwow dancing. I was a show dancer, and then I went off and did shows with everybody.
Yeah.
And it was fun at times, but at times, you still get the icky people.
Yeah.
And I started to really get interested. Oh, I know what it is. It was my sisters. I had two older sisters, and they were 10 and 11 years older than me.
Right.
So they wanted me to get culture. And you think about these things that people say, like, our culture isn't enough.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I told some of the students about this, that. So I was sent to piano lessons. I hated it. I was shocked that a teacher would hit my hands. I never got hit at home, and this teacher was hitting. So I would drive the subway back and forth until it was time for me to come home, and I'd come home. And then they took me to a dance class, and that seemed pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And they were interested in me.
Yeah.
So I started to, learn technique.
Yeah.
And then I met this wonderful woman who graduated from the Laban School in London, and she was my mentor. And but a lot of times I think I had an idea, and so I would go for the idea. So I studied dance from, I was like 13 or younger when I'd studied Laban. And
that's amazing.
And I started to see all kinds of different things and the way different people moved and all of that. And really, the curiosity was very big. And then I graduated. I said, oh, well, I think I'll go to Juilliard. So,
which everybody always wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went to Juilliard. I didn't
know
go to Juilliard. No.
That's what I was going to say. I didn't know that.
I
didn't find
auditioned
that.
for
Okay.
Juilliard.
Right.
And you have to have a dance.
Yeah.
And I I did this dance on a chair with Rage Shankar music, and I have no idea what I did. I just did a dance, and then it was time for pliés and bar exercise and everything. And I barely got through that. Then they came across the floor, and coming across the floor, you have to have ballet slippers. Well, I never thought of that. Why would you need ballet slippers when you have your feet? And I couldn't get across the floor unless I had ballet slippers on.
Right.
So I said, I don't have ballet slippers. And I always say to people, I don't know who was more embarrassed, the teachers because I didn't have ballet slippers, or me that I didn't have ballet slippers.
Right.
And with that, everything went awry. And I didn't get into Juilliard.
Wow.
But
Amazing.
But I went looking for classes, and I started to study with Jean Erdman. Oh, I first started studying Martha Graham, and I didn't like that. And then I went to Eric Hawkins, which was her ex-husband or something. So he was a famous dancer. And then Gene Erdman, and there was someone else I can't remember now, and ballet. And I enjoyed it very much, and I got scholarships to those places. And then I decided to go to the Henry Street Playhouse. And there I met Alwyn Nicolai and all these, Murray Lewis, all these dancers. And I, really, and the thing is, I didn't realize how everyone else had pampered me. Oh, she's a cute little Indian or whatever they say,
Yeah.
Oh, brown girl. There were there were no brown people in these things.
Right.
Everyone was white and blonde. And so when I got into the Playhouse, it was really hard because this was a dance school. And so, I had bloody feet. I had blisters. And they really try to knock you down.
Right.
So you get knocked down, you have to get up again.
Yeah.
And the more I did that, I realized that I wanted to dance. I wanted to be a dancer, but I wanted it on my own terms. So what happened, of course, was that everyone was coming down river, and I was, struggling up the river, up the waterfall, and and then I did, I remember I had a dance on a yellow chair. I had another dance, and I played the trombone in the dance. I can't play the trombone, but I liked the idea of blowing a trombone. So I danced. I made this dance, and I had a trombone in it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yes, it was.
Improvisation. You were an improvisational dancer.
So somewhere along there, Gene Erdman really took care of me, and I worked, and I really started to, really choreograph, and she was really wonderful in supporting me, and she was so famous, and she had a famous husband, and they kind of
took you under their wing.
That's really
amazing. Wow.
And I was understudy for her when she did this famous piece called Coach with the Six Insides, and it was I forgot what it was about, but I was understudy, and I used to pray that nothing happened to her. No idea what I was going to do when that happened. But that was my life.
How many years was that you were doing dance?
Oh, a long
5 years?
time. Oh.
Longer than that?
I started dancing when I was 13.
Wow.
And
amazing. That's so cool.
and I really, I don't know. I must have been in my 20s. I tried little dance groups here, little dance groups there, and showing people in somebody's house. But at some point, I got tired of pointing my toes.
Right. Yeah.
And that's when I met Joe Chaikin. He wanted
Shifted
dancers, yeah.
Into theater.
Yeah,
Cool.
because he wanted dancers.
Oh, that's funny. And you wanted out of dancing.
Yeah. So when his exercise, I understood his exercises immediately. I knew where he was going. So he asked me to be in
And
his
what
group.
were your sisters doing during all this time?
One
Like-
was a college professor's
Really?
wife,
Oh,
college
wow.
professor's wife. And the other was studying Nita singing, and she studied with Uta Hagen.
Oh, wow.
So Elizabeth went to HB Studio,
Wow.
and Gloria was studying with, I can't remember his name now, at Oberlin.
Right. Right.
because her husband was a professor there, and so she was open with.
Wow.
But my sister would say, you realize how culturally depressed we are. Was it not depressed?
Deprived.
Deprived. That's
Right.
the word.
Yeah.
She would say that, and I would say, "Oh, what's well, what do you mean I'm culturally deprived?" So, I was hanging out with my friends and going to powwows and going to class. I mean, what more can you want?
And you lived in New York City.
And I
on
lived in New York City.
top of it all. Did you ever, as a kid, sneak into any of those
Oh,
Broadway shows?
yeah.
Oh my God, I would love that.
I
would
used
love
to
that.
wait until intermission. I never saw the first act, but I would go into intermission and sit someplace.
Right.
And if anyone said anything, I would,
Move.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, that's right. Oh, I thought it was my
Your
scene.
performance would
Right.
come out.
But
Amazing.
But the thing that really fascinated me, we knew one guy who was in Jose Lamon's dance troupe. And Jose Lamon, he looked like Alejandro.
Right.
And he was beautiful.
Yeah.
And he was a Mexican Indian, and he was famous.
Mm.
And this guy said, well, come and see workout. So he brought me and my sister to Lamon's studio, and I watched, and it was like, oh my God, I'm watching a god dance, and my mouth was, and my sister, because I got so silent, thought I was having some kind of attack. She kept on shaking me and saying, wait, stop that, stop it, don't this to me. And I was,
Oh.
it was.
And plus, seeing a brown person.
Oh God,
right?
seeing a brown person dance like
Yeah.
that was just,
Yeah.
it was,
It was probably something pretty unique
Yeah,
to see.
it
right?
was.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to really see him alive, not
Wow.
off on the stage, but looking at him right there in
Wow.
the studio at the bar.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Amazing. That's pretty historic.
Yeah.
For sure.
it is.
What time are we at? How is everybody? A little bit longer? Is that cool? And then we'll shift to some Q&A. Is that good? All right. Okay. Okay. Let me see. I want to ask you something. Make sure I don't miss anything here. All right. Well, Spider Women.
Oh.
Spider Women Theater is 45 or 46 years. 45 years old. Pushing 50. Longest running feminist theater company, which is pretty freaking awesome, run by an Indigenous woman. How did you accomplish that in New York City? Like, how is
Yeah.
that possible?
I never thought of it. I was so angry by the time American Indian movement started, right? And it was really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Women were getting beaten up, women were getting raped, and no one said anything. And then I had some young men staying at my house, and they would, they'd walk away from the table and leave everything on the table. So I said something about that to these young men, and they said, "Are you one of those women's libbers?" Yes, they said, and then I had some of them sleeping on my floor,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I really got angry, because, I'd go. I was buying the food. My
Right.
family was buying the food, and you'd open up the refrigerator, and you'd see empty cans. So you'd say nicely, "When you finish the can, please take it away." And
Right.
so I looked in there one day, and I saw that we had a lot of juice and so on. so I didn't buy it. So I went back and picked up a can that was empty. Put that down, and I picked up another one. It was empty. It was at least 3.
Right.
And I got so angry that I started to throw it at them. And I picked up a can and said, "This is empty too, boo! This was empty too, boo!" And they got the idea.
I guess so.
And that was like the beginning of being angry all the time, really being angry.
Right.
And not only being angry, but the wails and the pinches and all of that really started to get me really angry. So I started to talk to other women about it, and by this time I wasn't working with open theater anymore, but I really wanted to work with women. And open theater was the ones who said they discovered storytelling.
Right.
So so they would say, "Oh, Muriel, you really you tell such wonderful stories and blah 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 blah," and my reaction to that is, of course I do. I grew up in an oral tradition, and no one made those connections.
No, not back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that idea of storytelling and how I wanted to work storytelling and what I felt storytelling was about, that I started to collect different women. And God, how long ago? Come and Get Your Love. What is that? Red.
Come and get you.
Come and get you.
Redbone. Redbone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I collected a group of women, and that's what we'd warm up to. Come and Get Your Love. What's the name? It's
Redbone.
Redbone. Yeah. And that's how I started, and then I it's blurry to me there because I had kids and a husband and all that kind of stuff, and I decided I wanted to really work with women about violence, and that was the first production. I had the support of Open Theater. I had the support of Joe and so forth, who came to see it and talked to me about it, and talked to me about, like, how do I want to do it. And then when I started to really story weave I was asked to do something in a church. And in the church, they had all these different musicians doing, rubbing bowls and dropping stones and so forth. And they they asked me if I wanted to work a story. So 3 things happened. One was that, again, she was a Hopi Ho-Chunk woman that I grew up with. And she wanted to tell Spider Woman stories, and that's creation stories. She was also a wonderful finger weaver. And so I took what she was working on and dropped it from the, near the top of the church, and put her on boxes. And she told stories, Spider Woman stories, as she was weaving.
Wow, beautiful.
And then the next woman was not native, and she was talking about, her stories was about making love to Jesus. And and my stories was, I just came back from the Sundance, and I had a whole thing with a butterfly, and so I told a story of talking to the butterfly.
Right.
Then I had a film, and don't ask me where I got it from, I don't know, and I put this big, like, roaring river through all of us. So it one person was on that side, I was on this side, and she was up.
Hi.
And it was, I started to understand breathing. I started to understand how one hears a word and how do you pass the word. And sometimes it's just a response. You hear the word and you want to say the word, and sometimes it comes out together. And that's how the story weaving really started, was how deep is the word? How are you listening to the word? Are you breathing when this person talks? All of that. And that was the beginning of story weaving.
Wow, it's so beautiful. That's really powerful in the connection
Yeah.
of the three women as well. It's wow. And what was the reception like to
Whoa.
this work?
Well, there are, like 2 Indian women and a white woman. We were all feminists and all that kind of stuff.
Super popular.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. I can visualize it, just how you described it. It's mesmerizing to think about it.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing, in the class.
In the class, yeah. It's pretty incredible. Well, speaking of story weaving, I always think about your quilts,
Yeah.
right? And patchworks and how those were, I guess you utilized those a lot as your backdrop in the beginning of Spider Woman Theater, and I always think about that. I always thought it was the patchworks of the stories and the weaving there as well of all of these stories and threads, right?
Yeah.
And how that was very much a part of who we were as these strong women in New York. Like I think about here and women doing this work, like scrubbing, so for example, scrubbing project, right?
Yeah.
But it's like that idea of weaving and how it doesn't happen as often anymore
Yeah.
in theater or in even just in story, but that beauty of material. And then I started thinking about everything you've done and how you began with violence and then material witness, and you're working with next generation artists, and that was about violence as well. It's just a really interesting circle that, and a continual circle, because you nurture so many young artists that have been a part of CIT, but you've also created that and strengthen and nurture these new generations. And then you have these powerful connections to violence, but you use humor to tell these stories.
Yeah.
And that is pretty incredible as well. Like, how do you do that?
Well, we were listening to a lot of feminists during that time. And oh my God, it was like, my mother hated me, my father hated me, my husband beat me up. And it was like, and after a while, all you could say was, ow.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, and they can't hear anything else.
Right.
So I started to think there must be other ways to make people listen to you, and that you're not whining.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was important, because they're not going to listen if you're still beating them on the head.
Yeah.
So I started I went to my brother-in-law and I asked for all the dirty jokes he knew. So I collected all these dirty jokes, and we kept on asking, and racist jokes. And we would tell them.
Mm-hmm.
So, a dirty joke would show, and people go, oh, and we'd go, and we'd go on to the next thing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's campy, and I wonder if that was kind of related to those Wild West rodeo
Oh,
shows,
God.
and
Yeah.
it's so funny how it's all connected.
Yeah,
to me,
it's
seems.
true. We did
Yeah.
one piece called Winnetou Snake Oil Show from Wigwam City. Winnetou Snake Oil Show from Wigwam City. And we based it on this Karl May, who was this German guy that wrote
Those books.
those books.
Yeah.
And we just went all out,
Yeah.
and we did we did
Campy.
camp, and it was
Yeah.
campy.
Yeah.
We would take somebody from the audience, make them into an Indian, and what was his name? We always made them take this name. Two Dogs Fucking. That was the name. That was the name of the. And we would put a beautiful face. If it was a woman, a beautiful woman's native woman's face, or a man, a beautiful face of the man, and my sister would say, "Goodbye, Two Dogs Fucking." May you go and here, and we would give them a medicine bag, which was a brown paper bag with a condom, a Band-Aid, and a tiny little Indian. And we would send them on their way. We'd say, "Bye, Two Dogs Fucking, bye."
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. Amazing. Oh my God.
Well, some people they said we were terrible because we didn't share.
Oh.
Yeah, we didn't share.
Oh, jeez.
What? Which one? Have you seen I Used to Be a White Woman? Anybody? No? Okay. This, yeah. But, I Used to Be a White Woman. It's okay. I used to be a white woman. But
Well, maybe Elsie, does any of you have any questions? Maybe the who's in the beige sweatshirt is looking it up on his phone right now. I'm just kidding.
God, who? Who? What?
I'm just teasing
Oh.
you. Do any of you have a question? Come on. All right.
Safe.
We'll watch that.
All safe. Isn't that beautiful? It's a beautiful dress.
And there's the patchwork.
I used to be a white woman. It's true. I was Irish. German. I was Scandinavian. And then, one day I woke
Is that the Hopi woman?
No, that's Hortensia.
Oh, Hortensia. Cool.
Hortensia, Colorado.
Wow. Cool. Cool. Questions? Has anybody thought of a question? Oh. You're pretty slick. In the back alley of Gucci.
Not us. Someone loved us. And we got these costumes.
Oh,
But they were made for Sun, Moon, and Feather, which is our film, and it was for a particular piece, and the filmmaker really wanted us to have really ha-cha-cha outfits, and so we made these.
they're pretty flash.
Yeah, my shoes matched. I think it was a different venue, but I don't remember. I don't remember where it was. It was in New York, but I don't remember where.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Theater for New City? Oh. Oh, this was on when I was on tour. Okay. To Europe? Oh, we did Women in Violence and Lisa Strata Number. That was interesting because at that time I really wanted a native troupe, but nobody was available, so I asked two African American women. So we did a group, a theater of women of color.
Ah, cool.
And we did Lisa Strata Number.
And when was that? Like, about
I don't
what
know.
year, what time frame? That's pretty cool. Because that, people think they are. Oops, sorry, my phone's on. People think that just started these days, right? Like a lot of people think that collaboration between
Yeah,
Black
yeah.
and Indigenous folks. Oh my God, how annoying!
Oh, step on it.
Dead now. Rose Stella has a question. No, I said Rose Stella has a question.
What did you want to ask me? Oh. Yeah. Well, the lousiest thing is doing a one-person show. I'll tell you.
It's a lonely world.
It's a lonely world, and you're the only one on stage. You stop, nothing happens. And you have to remember that. My warm-up was an hour and a half for Red Mother. But it came out of, we were working at Banff, and we had a very famous director from the Brecht ensemble, which is in Europe, in Germany. It was on the other side of the wall. And she came over, she worked with Brecht, and she came over to show what they did. This whole project was called Justice. And this woman came in and treated us like we didn't want to be treated. I mean, treated us like everyone else treated us. And I remember someone asking, well, how's it going? I said, well, you know, it feels like all us Indians are trying to be Germans. And that's what it felt like. And she really wanted to direct us exactly how Brecht directed all these various pieces. So it was so hard to do. I came in one day in a rehearsal skirt, and it was orange and black, and you know, it was, they wanted me to do what is the name of the place? Red Mother. Mother Courage. And so this was my rehearsal skirt, and she said, you can't wear that, it's so bright, look how bright it is. And I said, I want to wear this. She said, don't you see that this is va, darling, this is va. And I said, well, you ever see an Indian go to war? You know, we paint everything. We paint our faces. We paint our horses. We paint, you know, like, and then she said to me, that's the problem. She didn't know how to make that jump over talking to us. I had such a hard time wearing moccasins, high-top moccasins. She didn't want me to wear moccasins. I wanted to sing a song, like, you know, a round dance song, and she didn't want me to do that. I fought all the way doing this piece. So at the end, everyone was saying, oh, Muriel, you were so wonderful. And I was saying, ugh, you know, didn't feel wonderful. It felt like I had to fight to get anything I wanted, and I still didn't get what I wanted. And so someone suggested, why don't you do it the way, you know, you think of it, of what Mother Courage is. So I really, and I did, dedicate it to all the women that didn't make it, were prostitutes, alcoholics, addicts, who left their children. I dedicated all of Red Mother to that. Because I was thinking in ways of, some of us wouldn't know how to make scones if some mother in there didn't pass it down. Some of us wouldn't know how to do beadwork if some mother in there didn't pass it down. And we never think of them. We just think of them as they're gone, and they were mean to me. And I hated them. And a lot of our traditions would be lost if we didn't have someone doing that, someone really at the gates doing that. So that's where I went with Red Mother. But also, I was interested in the manipulation and how this mother manipulated, how she, you know, would say, you know, go. She, you know, sold her little baby and said, don't worry, honey. So she did that. But she got money, and she did that with her son. Sent him off to war, saying that, you know, we're going to have money if you go to war. So that kind of a manipulation, you know, like how does, and then I start looking at the communities we come from and how, if we start talking about, the crabs in the bucket, you know what I mean? The crabs in the bucket. The one crab gets up and the other one pulls them down. That we have a lot of that, where does that come from? What kind of that's manipulation. How I can only talk from where I'm from. The graft, making yourself better than, all of that is part of the society that we think of. It isn't always nice and sweethearts and flowers. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to think about that. I wanted to just show it raw. So that's how, Red Mother happened. But it was for the whores, and it was for the addicts, and it was for them too. We forget about them. We get angry at them. So I don't know if it was favored or not, but that's what I did. Yeah. Well,
Especially with that in mind, like all these women, and that's very powerful. And I could feel your passion just speaking about that and how connected you were.
That was the last piece I did. So how old was I, Deborah?
Wow. Amazing. It's intense.
Yeah, it took me an hour and a half to warm up to get to do it, But, again, I'm going to die in a wheelchair on stage. It really feels that way. I feel that's what's going to happen,
So speaking of the future, I'm like, is there, besides the wheelchair on stage, is there one real core dream or specific thing that Muriel Miguel would like to accomplish?
I want, in New York City, I want a theater space for Native people, Native theater. And I just started to feel around amongst the municipality there. But I really, everyone else in New York has them. Asians have them, African Americans have them, Mexicans have them, Puerto Ricans have, they all have theater spaces.
Right.
And we don't. Now what's that about? No one asked us. And so I...
And that's crazy because you've been around for 45 freaking years. Oh my God.
I got
nuts.
was it 20,000 to have a convene with people that are interested.
Right.
But it feels like I paid them to come and did all of that. But it really feels like they're waiting for me to do it.
Right.
And which means that I don't want to be the director of a theater space. And then, on top of all of that, I started to lose interest, was that they wanted to call it American Indian something. I say, damn.
That's boring. Hasn't that been done already?
Yes, we've done that.
Yeah.
And why don't we take a name that we want, not that someone gives us?
Yeah.
So I'm in there fighting.
Good.
So,
Cool.
but that's what I
Wow.
want. I really want that, and I want something that I can bring, Native students in, and work and bring in voice teachers and dance teachers and everything. Something like CIT.
CIT in New York City. Wow.
So,
Well, what I want is for you to sign my magazine. And yeah, this is Muriel and her sisters. And it's a great, there's a great article, and I always use this in the Indigenous theater history class because I think it's just really cool. Like, there's such a great article and photos of you and your sisters. Here's another one. And I think it's really, it was wow, you've had such an incredible influence on so many people's lives, and CIT students and instructors and the community, the arts community here in Toronto and worldwide. And thank you, Muriel. Thank you for being.
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Thank you for tonight, and you know, it is an honor, and I truly believe that you teach the that idea also of always remembering the past as you move forward.
Yeah.
Right? And all of the legacy of so many people, and your legacy will be alive for many, many, many generations to come.
Oh, thank you.
There'll be story weavers in those stars.
I
and
hope
on
so.
this land.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, after all, we're just made of stardust.
Thank you, Muriel.